Hello and welcome to The Conscious Capitalists, hosted by two of the co-founders of the Conscious Capitalism movement and co-authors of the Conscious Capitalism Field Guide from Harvard Business Press, Raj Sisodia and Timothy Henry. Each week, this podcast covers current events and business news and Raj and Timothy's latest thinking on what it takes to build a conscious business. For more information and notes from the show, go to www.theconsciouscapitalists.com. And now, Raj and Timothy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 36 of The Conscious Capitalists with myself, Timothy Henry, and my partner in making the world a better place through business, Raj Sisodia. Hey, Raj.
Hey, Timothy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Boy, are we honored today to have the guest we have, Richard Leiter, the man who's probably the father of purpose. He has written over 11 books that in some way or another deal with this topic of purpose. He's been the host of The Power of Purpose, a PBS special that's been viewed by millions of people. He has been the founder of InVenture, the Purpose Company. It's created a guide for individuals to live, work, and lead on purpose. And he's ranked by Forbes as one of the top 5 most respected coaches. He's coached over 100,000 leaders, and through his talks and influence, touched millions of people worldwide. So, Richard, one of the last things I want to say is that for over 30 years, you've led these InVenture tours of Tanzania, which I always thought was just a fascinating thing on my bucket list at some point. We're just so honored and pleased to have you here today, the father of purpose, Richard Leiter.
I'm equally honored. It's a real privilege. Thank you for including me.
Well, I guess one of the first things I want to ask is, why do you get up in the morning?
Well, since I was young, I've always been curious about why people do what they do and why they don't change if they're stuck. And so I kind of went the psychology route. And my reason for getting up in the morning is to help others unlock, that's different than discover, unlock their purpose, because it's inside waiting to be released in certain ways. And we can get into that. So I find great pleasure in hearing people's stories and maybe adding some value or something to that. So that's my purpose.
So it's interesting. What was that journey to purpose? Like, how did you come to the point where you said, okay, this is the thing. Purpose is the unlock here. It's the lever point that's going to help people live more full lives. How did you get to that point?
Well, I would say there was 3 things that all kind of happened within a reasonably short period of time. One, when I got out of graduate school in counseling psychology, I saw on the bulletin board in the school that one of the people I studied was doing a seminar in San Diego. And I didn't have any money, and I was in Colorado at the time, but his name was Viktor Frankl, who wrote.
Oh, boy.
So I spent a week with Viktor Frankl, and you could hear a pin drop for a week, and it changed my life forever. And he said, the last of the human freedoms is choice. It's to choose what you want your life to be about, regardless of the adversity. And for your listeners, he was in 3 concentration camps, and his whole family was killed, and he survived and went on to write Man's Search for Meaning, which is a seminal book in many people's lives. Coupled with that, it was the Vietnam War era, and I had to get a job, do something, or go to war. And I got into a reserve unit in Minnesota where I live. So I didn't have to go. I had to go into the Army for 6 years, but I didn't have to go to Vietnam. And so I got a job. But during that job, I had a side hustle. I was one of the top HR people at what is now U.S. Bank. It used to be called First Bank. And but I had what's now called a side hustle called Lunch Hour Limited. You buy me lunch and I coach you. So the CEO didn't think that was such a great idea that I was coaching people about their careers. But I had an 80% success rate. 80% of the people I coached quit. And however, for conscious capitalists, many of them stayed. I mean, they quit, but they went back and reimagined their work and to add more of who they were to what they were doing, or switch to some other place in the organization. And about 15% left. And then the third thing, I got a fellowship with what is now the Harvard Study of Adult Development, the longest standing study of adults. So if you add Frankl and my own practice, so to speak, and a year in Boston on the Harvard campus studying, I said, this is my calling. There's something calling me here. So I left my corporate role and took up my side hustle. And, it was a roller coaster. I had to mortgage my house a second time. And, I wasn't exactly making a living right off the bat. But eventually it turned into, here we are today.
Wow. There's so much there I want to dig into. And the first one, Raj and I are both going to jump on this one, is Viktor Frankl and the being with him. I mean, we're both big, he's a big hero of us. We recommend his book all the time. Yeah. I'm just curious, I've never met anybody who's actually met him. What was the vibe? What was it like being around him? What was he like as a person?
Intense. Between his eyesight and his body a bit hunched and his teeth, etc., he was fine. But they were the reason he was in San Diego was that one of the universities there was going to create a Viktor Frankl Institute, a logotherapy institute, which never got off the ground and never got funded exactly. But there were chalkboards. Remember chalkboards? And so he would write, and the chalk would be flying, and he would be. And the small group that was there, about 25 people only, and I kind of weaseled my way into that. I mean, they just left him alone. If he needed a break, he needed a break. But when he spoke, you could hear a pin drop. Everything he said had such a relevance and an intensity to it, but loving. I mean, it was all about compassion and purpose. The soul of purpose is compassion, and he was all about compassion.
Well, the only other person that I've met is Edith Eva Eger, who is also a survivor from Auschwitz, and she said she danced with Viktor Frankl on his 80th birthday.
I have her book in the other room, and I haven't met her, but what was she like?
Oh, she's amazing, and she's still alive, actually. I met her at Deepak Chopra's Sages and Scientists event. And, she was incredible. She went to Auschwitz. She was taken when she was 16. She survived because Joseph Mengele took a fancy to her. She was a dancer, and that's how she kept out of the chambers, and her mother was sent in. Yeah. And so her story is incredible because she came out, she survived. She was actually in a pile of bodies, having been left for dead by the guards once the Americans were approaching. And an American soldier walked by and he saw one finger moving, in this body that was 3 or 4 deep. Right. Yeah. He pulled her out, and that's how she survived, and then eventually made her way to the US. And she had this survivor guilt for decades. Yeah. And she had to go back to Auschwitz, and she had to relive, and she had to lie down on those beds, and just go through the whole experience. Yeah. Reconnect to it in order to be able to be released from it, and then shape her life. And, so it's an incredible story.
And one of the lessons back to this experience of him was a showstopper or a game changer for me personally. And I think to this day is for many people who read the book or read about him. He said, don't ask what is your purpose. Ask this, what is life asking of me now in this situation, whatever it is? Purpose is the backstory for that. You have to have a mindset like that to begin with, because purpose is a verb. It's something we do. It's not something we have. And so acting means, what is life asking of me now, right now in this situation? And you make that choice, and it's either about you or it's about them. And so, purpose goes through 3 layers or 3 stages. The first is it's about you and about your own self-awareness of your own mindset and gifts and things. And then secondly, it's about us. We realize, hopefully, as we get a bit older, that, and I mean from adolescent to adult type of thing, it's about not just about me, but it's about my tribe, my family, my community, and others. And then ultimately, the sages like Frankl and others say it's about all of us. It's a universality. And so purpose is both fundamental and universal. And it's not a luxury. That's the biggest insight that I can give to people, is that it's not a luxury. This is fundamental to health, to healing, to happiness, to trust as a leader, and other things. And so you can go by different names, but purpose is something that is not a luxury for the educated or the older or the wealthy, or it is fundamentally in our DNA.
So pull on that string a little bit more. It's fundamentally in our DNA, one. And then two, you made a quote that I loved. The soul of purpose is compassion. Connect those two pieces, if you could, for us.
Well, in the book, The Power of Purpose, 3rd edition, written while I was doing the PBS special, because you have to have a brand new book coming out if you're going to do a PBS special, but they wanted that book renewed. And one of the things they paid for was for me to go to neuroscience labs in different parts of the country and visit with, and I've been a coach actually and a consultant to the American Academy of Neurology for a decade. So I knew a lot of these neuroscientists, sort of. But one of them at Johns Hopkins held up a pill and he said, "Richard, do you see this pill? Would you buy this?" And I said, "What does it do?" His name is Dr. Majid Fatoui. He's an Iranian immigrant who's a neuroscience researcher. And this pill, he said, will reduce the effects of Alzheimer's, which so many people fear as they get older, rightfully so. It will help with sleep apnea and sleep disorders. It will add 7 to 10 years to your life. And it will help your telomeres grow so that you won't. And he went through all this stuff. And I said, "Well, I mean, who could afford that?" And he said, "Well, it's free." And he smiled. And he said, "We now can measure purpose in the brain, purpose and elasticity in the brain. And people who have it, and even people who have Alzheimer's and who live a good life with Alzheimer's versus those who are, decline with it." So anyway, he said, "It won't be long before your doctor will be prescribing that you need a reason to get up in the morning." So purpose is really the answer to why. Why are you here? What's the point? Why do you get up in the morning? And so that mindset. And so I think when people start to see that there's actually evidence, so it becomes, every new idea goes through stages. The first is ridicule, which, purpose was like, well, get a life, do something that purpose, who's going to pay for that? And then opposition, often violent opposition or pushback, and then self-evident. Well, purpose is now pretty self-evident. And part of that is because of the neuroscience that's actually proving it in certain ways. It's not the answer, it's part of the answer of well-being.
But the other part of that was soul of purpose is compassion.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that. How did you get to that conclusion?
Well, a couple different ways. I took a year off and went into seminary about a decade ago to study purpose and world religions. Because I wanted to, I've looked at it from a psychological and a philosophical angle, but I wanted to look at it from a medical health angle, but also a spiritual angle. And I found that every major religion talks about purpose in its love for others, or it's not about you, it's about them in certain ways. And so they use different language and different metaphors, et cetera. But and I would answer this, Tim, and that is that purpose is a felt sense. It's a concept, but you can feel it when you're with somebody, and you can feel it when you, I always give people the default purpose. People say, "Oh, it's too big an idea. I'll get around to this." I said, "Well, just let me give you the pill right now. Let me give you the RX, the prescription." And it's only 2 words. It's grow and give. If you're growing and giving every day consciously, and we're talking about consciousness here, as if you're consciously making the choice to grow and give every day, there are 1,440 choices in the day. 1,440 purpose moments where you can step into someone else's shoes, so to speak. So I said, put grow and give on a Post-it, put it on your mirror, and every morning ask yourself, how am I going to grow and give? And before you go to sleep at night, hold yourself accountable, and or have a purpose partner who holds you accountable. And at the end of the day, maybe not the first day, but in the course of the week, you'll have a felt sense that this purpose thing feels pretty good. You feel more alive, have more of a sense of what Joseph Campbell calls bliss, but more aliveness if you make this choice, even just for one moment a day. You don't have to save the world.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I love that. Grow and give. I think it's better than grab and go, right?
That's the unconscious capitalists.
That's good.
But I think, Richard, you're, in a way, you were really fortunate in that in your 20s, you got to have these experiences and get exposed to these thinkers and influences. For me, I was almost 50 when my purpose kind of found me, I felt, because I wasn't actively searching because it wasn't in the atmosphere back then, and I had not read Viktor Frankl until after that. And so I was following more what Andrew Harvey would say, follow your heartbreak.
Yeah.
I knew what really distressed me, what brought me pain, especially in the world of business and in marketing, all the abuse and the unethical stuff and everything else, right? So I was following my heartbreak until I found a portal into the other side of it, the bliss.
Yeah.
Like, this was causing heartbreak. What is the answer to that? And that's when I felt my purpose kind of found me. I had stayed connected to that which mattered deeply to me, right? So would that be a pathway for some people? If you can't find your bliss, at least identify your heartbreak and see what clues that gives you.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 myths, Raj, that I talk about with purpose. Number one is that people say, oh, you found a cause. And I said, purpose is not a cause. It can be a cause. It can find you through the heartbreak, could be a cause to one of your children, or, anything. It could be the climate. It could be other types of things that, but it doesn't have to be a cause. It's a mindset. Like I'm saying, it's a choice you make every morning. Second myth is that it's a revelation, that it was revealed to you in your 20s because of this, but it hasn't been revealed to me, and now I'm 50 or whatever. And I said, it can be a revelation, but it also is a practice. It's something that you can get by choosing common sense to make a difference in one person's life every day. And the third is that it's a luxury. And I've already said that it's not a luxury. It's fundamental. And my favorite quote about that for people who are aging or who are at different stages, kind of still seeking their purpose, is this. It's from the American essayist E.B. White. He said this: I arise in the morning, torn between a desire to save the world and a desire to savor the world. This makes it hard to plan the day. Well, I think it makes it easier to plan the day because saving and savoring is a good thing. You want to savor and have a happy, fulfilled life. But if it's all about that kind of narcissism, possibly, that happiness erodes pretty quickly. Deep fulfillment comes from saving, but you don't have to save the world. You just have to reach out to one person every day. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Richard, it's interesting. One of the debates we've had, or discussions we've been having over the past about purpose in organizations is, does an organization have a purpose that is sort of eternal in the sense that it's constant, versus you articulate your purpose in different ways. At its core, there's still something that's core, but as you evolve, as the organization evolves, it may change. And I'm curious whether with individuals, the purpose one feels at 20 or the purpose one feels at 40, the evolution of that purpose at 50 or 60? Does it fundamentally change, or does it just sort of morph around a theme? How would you describe that?
I'll share what I consider the formula for discovering your purpose. And the formula is 3 letters: G plus P plus V equals C. G plus P plus V equals C. The C is calling. And calling is a vocational word, since you grounded it in an organizational context here. The C is calling, which is a vocare, to be called. And what are we called to do? Well, the G is gifts. You could call it talents, but gifts, what are your gifts? And I created a tool called calling cards, and I've written a lot about gifts. And I went back and talked, when I developed this calling cards tool, I went back and talked to parents and teachers and siblings and others, and about, did this kid's gifts emerge young, or did they come later in life? And oh no, they came young. And I always ask audiences to raise your hand. How many of you have siblings? And not everybody, but many. And I'll say, are their gifts the same as yours? And there's laughter. No. I said, well, when did you notice? Oh, when we were little. You notice, and if you have kids, you'd know, or grandkids or nieces or nephews, you notice they're different. So one of the self-awareness musts in discovering the power of purpose and unlocking it is to discern your gifts. The P stands for passions or purpose. What do you want to use your gifts in the service of? What are the things in the organization, for example, that light you up, that you'd love to use your gifts? And that's what I was telling you about my lunch hour limited thing. I wanted to use my gifts of coaching more, but I was in an HR administrative role, and that wasn't part of it. So I had to have a side hustle to do that, which many people today do have.
Yeah.
And so passions are, what is it you care about? What are the problems you want to solve? Who are the people you want to help? That kind of thing. And then the V is the big one, and that's values. Are you using your gifts on things you care about in an environment where you have a voice, where the values are such that you can be transparent and you can be authentically who you are? If you have to fake it, you're not going to be as productive and as fulfilled as you could be. So, I think through the conscious capitalist lens that culture is perhaps the number one, well, in vocational psychology, it's the number one knockout factor. Yeah. People leave cultures, they leave bosses, and find a thing to do exactly what they're doing somewhere else, but it's a culture that's a better fit. So that's what I do a lot, is to help people figure out that formula, and I call it the Napkin Test. And actually, the Napkin Test came on a Delta flight on my way to London after somebody else had seen a PBS special, and he was sitting next to me in business class, and I had to do a speech the next day and the next afternoon in London, and we were going to land in the morning. And he kept bugging me. He said, I just lost my job. I'm going over to clean out my apartment, et cetera, and then move back to the States. Can you help me figure out what to do with the rest of my life? And so I call this, by the way, the Got a Minute School of Coaching, because in this business, people say, got a minute? Can you tell me what I should do with the rest of my life? I'm busy. I said, well, if you're that busy, take out a napkin and write down this formula. And he said, that's brilliant. That's exactly the framework I needed to think about. And then he let me finish writing my speech and sleep. So I now do something called the Napkin Test. And the Napkin Test is basically an actual form that looks like a napkin that has people do what I just shared.
It is brilliant. Well, let me pull on a big string here, because you have a new book coming out, and you've written 10 or 11. Is this going to be number 12 or this number 11?
This is number 11.
That's number 11. So you're not at the dirty dozen yet. You're almost there.
Well, I've written chapters in a lot of other people's books and forwards and things. So it's officially it's officially number 11. Yeah.
So the title is, Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old? The Path of Purposeful Aging.
Right.
So brilliant title. Why this book? Why now?
Well, I'll say that demographics are one thing, but that's not really it. We've
that helps sell the book proposal for sure. But.
That's true. Well, we've worldwide, and we've added decades to life, and so the average life expectancy in the early 1900s here in the States used to be age 47. Now it's 85 and over is the fastest growing cohort. So what's the purpose of these extra decades? And so people are not retiring because they can't retire, don't want to retire, or want to retire differently. And so we started, my co-author was a philosophy professor, David Shapiro. This is our 6th book together. And he works a lot with younger people. And he's in his 60s, I'm in my 70s, and we're looking at our own conversation about aging. And we decided to really take it on and see if we could, because everybody's getting, from birth, everybody's getting older, but not everybody's growing older. So how do we grow older, and how do we grow more whole? How do we evolve some of the pieces that we didn't have time to because we were so busy working or raising a family or paying the mortgage or, doing all those things. And so we made this book very much about stories and practices for people to grow whole. And the whole business of, there's 2 big shifts. And Raj, I think you kind of brought it up when you talked about turning 50 and that kind of thing. But the first big seismic shift is from youth to adulthood. And then the next big shift is from adulthood to elderhood. And in between, there's a midlife, and it used to be the midlife crisis. And now people are having a later life crisis in many ways. They're still asking the question, the question used to be, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so often people will laugh and say, well, that's a great title, but I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So that's in the book. I mean, and we talk in the book a lot about the good life, which was in the book Repacking Your Bags, which I know you're familiar with, and so helping people to discern their calling and and helping them reimagine the good life in the next phase of their life is really what this book is about. And the last book that I co-authored was with Alan Weber. And I don't know if you've had Alan on before, but Alan was the editor of the Harvard Business Review. He left to found Fast Company magazine. That's how we found each other. He wrote a story about me back in 1998, and that's how we've been very close colleagues and friends ever since. So we wrote a book called Life Reimagined. He sold the magazine, and he went on to move to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where his wife is an artist and a architect and things like that. And she wanted to leave Boston and go to New Mexico with the art colonies and art communities there. Well, Alan is now the mayor of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so people say, well, does this reimagining stuff really work? And I went, well, my co-author reimagined his life. Anyway, there are steps that we all take along the journey during these shifts where we perhaps need a little bit of help. Otherwise, we're always looking in the rearview mirror. Yeah. But what we help people do is look through the windshield. And the windshield's bigger than the rearview mirror, as you know. Looking in the past is kind of small. Good. You need to do a life review, perhaps. But looking in the windshield, what are the possibilities? And where are my headlights? Where are my focus? Where's that going to be?
Richard, in addition to Man's Search for Meaning, one of the other books that has had a big influence for me is Synchronicity by Joseph Jaworski. And this idea that in a way we get chosen or we are anointed or that there's something that seeks to emerge and we are the right vehicle for that, right? And therefore these collisions happen, and what look like coincidences are really synchronicities of something that seeks to emerge. What's your thought on that? Do you think there's any relevance to that idea, or is that how you think about it as well?
Yeah, I think about it in this way, and I know Joe, our new Joe, and the book, and I think it's a great book as well. I talk about fortuitous encounters, and Viktor Frankl was a fortuitous encounter. I didn't know at the time I was going to meet him and have my life changed. And I think anybody who's listening to this, including yourselves, has had fortuitous encounters with people who have been, for one reason or another, game changers for them. Another one for me, and this is kind of last of the bragging rights perhaps, but I met Abraham Maslow the year before he died. And Frankl and Maslow were adversarial because Frankl thought that the top of the pyramid was a bit narcissistic. And at the end, after Frankl, self-actualization is all about self-actualization for the sake of what? And is it for the sake of just yourself and your own success, or is it for the sake of something other than that? And so after he died, after Maslow died, his wife came out with a book which is a very hard read, but it's a good read if you're into this stuff. It's called The Farther Reaches of Human Nature. And what he came to the conclusion, they came together, Frankl and Maslow, and Farther Reaches, how many people teach the Maslow pyramid in leadership programs around the world and get it wrong? Because the top of the pyramid is, according to Maslow, is self-transcendence, which is purpose. And that's what Frankl's said, that it can't be just about self-actualization. That's not who we are as human beings. It's not in our DNA. It's all about transcending ourselves for the sake of others ultimately. Yeah. So I think, as we look at some of these seminal works, we got to keep looking at them.
So what do you think gets in the way most often when people are now sort of saying, I am at that stage where if somebody's sort of saying, I want to sort of reimagine the next steps, and this napkin thing is interesting, but I'm stuck. What do you find those things that people are getting stuck on?
Well, if you don't think you have a purpose, then you don't. I mean, you do, but you're not going to activate it in any way. So part of it is kind of a skepticism that comes that, I always think that I always make a distinction between smart leaders and wise leaders. And wise leaders are purpose smart. They understand that people need to be who they are authentically if they can, their gifts, passions, and values, and set up a culture to do that in certain ways. But I think the stuckness is often about busyness. I hear all that, and so if I stay busy enough, and I hear that from retirees, I'm busier than I was when I was working. And I said, well, what are you busy about? Ants are busy, what is that? What matters? And ultimately, they're busy doing things they didn't have time to do. For example, with retirees when they were working, but then that ends. They can only travel so much and play golf so much and clean so many closets or whatever. And then something's missing. And that something missing can come up through loneliness. And one of the things that I preach the gospel on is isolation is fatal. Going it alone is an incredibly bad idea. And I know a lot of leaders who are isolates and who don't have to seek a coach like me or the two of you, but they don't have sounding boards. And I've coached a lot of CEOs in my life, but I would fire them, or I would not hire them. I would not let them hire me if they didn't have a sounding board other than me. because I said, isolation is fatal. It's killing your body and your soul, not just your business acumen. And so, so I think that one of the things, to your point about being stuck, is that people are alone. And the pandemic has really opened up how important it is, how much we miss that connectivity with others. But then that connectivity has to have a certain vulnerability. We have to be real. And so many people are not that. And, we can go into a lot of details about that. But living an authentic life means being who you are, and that's bringing who you are to the table every day.
Well, that almost leads you, and I don't want to, technical term, vertical adult development, but it is, in a sense, then becomes an adult development issue at some level, doesn't it? I mean, what's my level of awareness and that ability to be vulnerable, that ability to sort of say, you know what? I'm a human being. I've got these parts of me and I got these parts of me. And that's the whole of me. And sometimes I'm a really cool guy and sometimes I'm a bit of a jerk. And I really apologize for times I'm a jerk. But I was also
the secret elixir of leadership is listening and listening to others. But you can't do that unless you have the capability or the desire to listen to yourself first. To really realize that. And that's something that can come at a younger age or through a crisis and I know I've interviewed people over the age of 65 now for almost 40 years. Every time I write a book, I interview elders because, for thousands of years, we sat around the fire with elders. And part of my going to Africa every year, I didn't in this past year because of the pandemic, but is to sit around the fire with elders and who are so. And I wrote a book called co-authored it with David, called "Claiming Your Place at the Fire," because I saw that the wisest of the elders in Africa, in these tribes that I was privileged to be with, that wisest, not the oldest necessarily, but the wisest of the old, sat the closest to the fire. Why? Because people trusted them. They wanted their stories. They wanted their wisdom. They wanted them to be central. So I always ask leaders, where will your place be at the fire? If your constituents had to put you, where would they put you? And where would you put yourself? Type of thing. And so I think in interviewing older people, there's been three themes that have come that I think your listeners might find of interest. So very quickly, I say, if you could live your life over, what have you learned? What would you do differently? And number one is I'd be more reflective. So one of the things that a lot of leaders don't take the time to do is to reflect, to step back and look at the big picture and see what really matters and talk to others about it, so to speak. Second, they'd be more courageous. They could live their life over. And the two areas they'd be the most courageous are work and love. Freud had it right. The Harvard study had it right, et cetera. But work means being more courageous at work does not mean taking big financial risks. It means being authentically who you are at work. Finding you spend, 60% of your life working, of your most valuable currency, your time working. And if you're doing something that doesn't fit you, that's a bad investment. And then love or relationships, being more authentic and vulnerable in your relationships, both at work and at home. That's where a lot of the regrets are for people in their lives. And the third thing, though, so we got reflection, courage. The third thing is purpose. As Steve Jobs said, don't settle. And what he was talking about was really the power of purpose, that everybody wants their life to matter. As Steve Jobs said, he wanted, and I did not meet him, but I know Walter Isaacson fairly well, who wrote the book about him. And he was, really wanted to make a dent in the universe. That's purpose. And it wasn't just for Apple's success or his success. He really wanted his products and his company to make a dent in people's positive dent, that is, in people's lives. So those three themes really pull their way through all my work on purpose and helping people reflect, make choices that are more authentic to who they are, and realize that ultimately mattering matters.
Well, it's interesting right now, certainly on the business side. I think it's often funny that when we started talking about purpose in 2008, people thought we had two heads, purpose, stakeholders, nowadays it's, topic du jour. And, actually after this, I'm going to give a talk to the City of London marketeurs and about purpose and a little bit about purpose washing. And this whole idea that you can have a purpose, but then you need to make it matter. It's not enough just to have a purpose, okay, you found your purpose. That's wonderful. But now you got to make it matter. And I'm curious, you spent a lot of your writing talking about people finding or discovering that purpose inside of them, allowing it to come out. Particularly as you get to this older generation, what does that mean to you to sort of make it matter now that you've sort of started to triangulate on what it is?
Yeah.
Now step into it.
It's a great question. And, as I said earlier, it's a verb. So it's something we do, we activate and we do. And let me share a story that's in this new book. It's about a guy named Ed Rapp, R-A-P-P. Ed was the number 3 guy in Caterpillar, one of the largest worldwide companies that builds tractor, earth moving equipment, so to speak. And at the age of 57, and I knew Ed because we co-taught at the Harvard Advanced Management Program. You had to bring in a case study. I brought him in as a live case study. And I also taught in Caterpillar's leadership program. So we knew each other. And at age 57, he was out running with his son and he noticed his foot was dragging. And make a long story short, he was diagnosed with ALS, which is a five-year life sentence. He's now 7 years into it. And rather than just, he resigned immediately. He was destined to be the CEO. He was the president of one of the divisions. He was destined to be the CEO of the whole thing. And he retired. And he had a worldwide following because he's a very purpose-driven leader. People love him and trust him and were shocked beyond belief about his diagnosis at the Mayo Clinic. So anyway, he lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, and now he with ALS, he founded something called ALS Strong, which has so far raised $14 million for ALS research.
Wow.
Since his diagnosis. And he's on the boards of different things like that. He walks with arm crutches now. He works out and does a lot of practices. But here's what gives his soul the juice every day. Every single morning, he gets up early and he coaches, like we're doing here on talking with each other on the phone or on Zoom. He coaches somebody who was just diagnosed with ALS and is scared out of their wits about it and needs to talk to somebody who has, they don't know the cause and they don't know the cure. So it's not like he's getting out of this alive. He's not. But every single day, and he said, we talk often, and I wrote this story about him in the book. He said, people always say, oh, so sorry, you're not living. He said, this is the good life. He said, I can't tell you how fulfilling it is for me to talk with someone who just got ALS and to help in that way. And so, it's the heart, so to speak, that is touched here in addition to the raising millions of dollars. So I think, as leaders, we can lead lives that are purposeful as well as lead organizations that are purposeful, but we have to have practices. Like he's got practices he does and teaches other people about those practices. So I always say to leaders, purpose is one thing. What are your practices? We're only as good as our practices. And so I've shared the one with the Post-it, and to get up every day and make a difference in one person's life. But then that becomes addictive. Pretty soon we want more of that feeling. It feels great. People trust, they come to me, they want more of me. And so it's not soft. The soft stuff here is really not that soft.
I would love you to talk a little bit about, that moment when you're working with someone and they go, I get it. I mean, that enlightenment moment. But then there's the next Monday, and the next Monday morning, they got to get up. And now is when the making it matter starts to kick in.
Right.
And so just a tiny bit about developing those practices, or, for me, my experience personally, and with some of the people I work with, is the courage to step into your purpose. Like, you can have a purpose, but then there's this courage to step into it, versus, but if I really wanted to live my purpose, then I'd have to, a little bit of the camel through the eye of the needle kind of thing.
Right.
So I'd love you to talk just a tiny bit more about that idea of, stepping into your purpose.
Well, Frankl just came out in 2019. He died 15 years ago, but they came out with a book of 3 lectures that he gave prior to when he got out of the concentration camp, weighed 87 pounds, went home, cured, wrote Man's Search for Meaning in 9 days. But prior to writing it, he was giving these talks. And they just came out with a foreword by Dan Goleman, the emotional intelligence guy. And the title is what I wanted to get to here, Tim, and that is this. The title of this book is his message, and that is Say Yes to Life in Spite of Everything. So that's the bottom line of purpose. Say yes to life in spite of everything, in spite of the adversities. Say yes to life every single day. What is your practice for doing that? And so making it easy and simple, or not easy necessarily, but simple for people. Oh, I don't have to save the world. I don't have to have a cause, but I do have to have a why. Why am I getting up? What's the point of the exercise? And so the lectures, Say Yes to Life in Spite of Everything, is how I would say that's kind of the bottom line of Man's Search for Meaning and our search for meaning. It's a daily thing. Yeah.
Well, Richard, your focus has been on the later stages of life and connecting to purpose. But I think if you look at the other end for young people, I read a very startlingly sad statistic that 25% of 18 to 24-year-olds seriously considered suicide just within 1 month during this epidemic, June, when they did the study. And that is just heartbreaking, right? It's just the people who have the most to live for are in such despair. And so this is an existential thing. If you don't connect people to purpose and to these transcendent things as part of our education system early on in life, some may or may not discover Viktor Frankl and other things along the way, but most will not. And so it just feels like it's like a stitch in time saves 9, right? We could do so much by incorporating this into our education system early on. And I don't know that most of our school systems do that. Do you know anything about what we're doing or what we should be doing with young people?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm working as an advisor to the World Leadership School, which is in a number of countries. A lot of schools are creating purpose schools, et cetera, which is kind of the big side of that. But it's and as Carl Jung said, the greatest damage you can do to young people or your kids is your own unlived life. So part of what's not happening for younger people is us modeling it. In other words, so the greatest damage you can do to young people is your own unlived life. Is really a lot of, I'll say, Raj, that when I give talks, and I hope to be back out there, but when I am in a room with people, and there's a lot of people in the room, and I'll just say line up afterwards to ask a question or to talk, I'd say at least 50% of the conversations are, do you do this for younger people? Because I got a kid who's a great kid, clueless, and I don't know how to help them, given their own my own reality of being busy and they're living in a different world and all of that. And so I do some things for younger people, but it's not my core. And but David Shapiro teaches purpose to kids in the 5th grade every week. It's called I can't remember what it's called, the Philosophy Academy or something like that in Seattle, where he really is. And he says this, 5th graders, he can secretly take that formula, gifts, passions, and values, but just the gifts part, and he'll talk to somebody, and then he'll go in front of the class and he'll say, here's somebody's top 5 gifts. Who is this? And almost everybody in the room knows who that is without ever having had a conversation about anything like we're talking about here. They know, and they know. But then as they grow older and have to make a living, perhaps, so many people say at midlife, I never really wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an artist, but I had to make a living and my parents wouldn't pay for an art degree. And so here I am, unfulfilled. What do I do now? This is a lifelong challenge. It's not an easy one, but it's got to start, Rogers, earlier with our own modeling. And I think Chip Connolly has coined the term. He's endorsed this book, and there's a story about him in the book. But he's coined the term mentern. Being a mentor and an intern. And so I think we need to be mentorns as adults these days, learners from these younger people, as well as mentors. Because, being a mentor, it's like, whose world are you living in? I didn't grow up with computers. I didn't grow up with a whole lot of things that my grandkids are growing up with.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Richard, we're going to wrap it up now. And
okay.
So I'm going to cut that part out. But Richard, thank you so much for this incredible dialogue and discussion we've had today. Really, really powerful. If people want to hear more about the work you're doing today and now, and where can they go? Where can they get more information about how to connect with the work you're doing? And let me just again put in that plug. Your book's coming out at the end of the month. It's at the end of this month of May. And again, the title is Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old? Certainly that's one place, but where else can they get more information about the stuff you're doing?
Well, my website, which is just my name, Richard Leiter, LEIDER.com, has a resource section with everything's free. You can download guides to unlocking your purpose. You can, there's tons of stuff there and I write a blog every couple of weeks. And so there's a lot of blogs on there that some of which have gone viral or go viral. And I said, share them with whoever you want if they're useful, because they're always short and they're always practices. There's always something to do. It's not just me pontificating about something I care about, but it's me taking a deeper dive into some segment that I hear that people want more help with. And so that's the place. And
The only thing I was going to ask is about, there are people in the world who have purpose, but it's kind of an evil purpose. Right?
Yeah.
And I think but your framework has value. So it's, that kind of addresses that, right? You can't, purpose is not enough. It needs to be a higher purpose, right?
I talked a little bit about the 3 levels of purpose, but the one universal, regardless of what age or stage or circumstance you're in, is it's always about others and the common good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not about you and your own success or your own tribe or your own point of view, even in certain ways. But that's something that every time that comes up all the time. Well, what about people with a dark side? And I said, well, that's there, and that's something we have to deal with. But we're talking about the light side here.
Thank you, Richard. That was wonderful. Really appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners and whatever podcast channel you're listening on. If you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button. And if you have any thoughts or comments, or you feel so moved, please go over to Apple Podcast or over to Spotify and leave us a comment or a rating. And if you want to leave a note for Raj or I, you can go to theconsciouscapitalists.com. And on our website, we have a place where you can leave a note for us. Thank you to Carla Villegas, our weekly producer for these. And Richard, thank you so much for your time and energy and all the beautiful, wonderful work you've done in the world. Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me in.